CEO's calling to get through. You wouldn't see that stuff today. So taking the leap for yourself, the risk level is not anywhere near what it used to be. If you've got a good idea, it means it's a worthy idea. Go do it.
Hey friends, and welcome back to this season of the Mary Marantz Show. If you are just joining us, this is a season we are lovingly referring to as the underestimated season after the title of my third book, which just released this year. Called Underestimated, the surprisingly simple shift to quit playing small, name the fear, and move forward anyway. So all this season, which we are now officially extending all throughout the rest of 2025, I am being joined by some amazing guests, some all-time favorite past guests and some brand new ones as we sit down and have the deep, hard conversations you know we love around here about all the different faces of fear I cover in the book. Things like procrastination, people-pleasing, imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, second-guessing, perfectionism, and more. And today, I couldn't be more excited to be joined by well-coached founder and CEO. He's the top business coach for creative, forward-thinking companies, the absolutely incredible Chris Weinberg, as we talk about success as a slippery slope and truly showing up and owning who you are as a leader. We're going to get into the 4 silos of success, the DISC assessment, EQ versus IQ, and so much more, and I can't wait. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mary. Thanks. That's a heck of an intro. I need to keep you around.
Yeah, that's right. I'll just come by every morning.
That's perfect.
Roll
I'm
you
ready
out
to
like
go.
that. Yeah,
No imposter syndrome with that kind of intro. So let's go.
That's
let's
right.
go.
Now, Chris, we actually got to meet in person in April when I was down in Nashville to do some podcasts in person for Underestimated. I got to be on your show. One of the things we very quickly realized when we first met is that we are both trailer kids.
How about that?
Trailer kids. And so I was wondering if you could kick us off just by sharing a little bit of your story and maybe talking about how that has informed the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, well, thanks. I grew up in a trailer with 2 wonderful parents, and then my dad died. I'm an only child. My dad died when I was pretty young, when I was 10, and then I had a mom that, thank goodness, was just full of grit and smarts and pick it up and go get it. And she got us out of small town South Carolina, which was a great childhood, but that was following my dad's path, and put herself back in school and went to Duke, became president of the MBA class, and had a successful career in investments. So it taught me very early what overcoming really tough blows look like, because that was a tough blow. It taught me what grit looks like, and it made me super attracted to smart, dominant females.
Yeah.
And just by being around one, that's all I knew. So what I got from my early shaping is what unconditional love looks like, what getting punched in the teeth looks like, what getting back up looks like, and how to own yourself and own your future, and don't let anything stand in the way. That's all the lessons in a nutshell.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, one of the things that I actually quote in Underestimated, and it's from a conversation I had with Jason Van Ruler when he was on the show, and it's from his book, Get Past Your Past. He's a licensed therapist. We talked about how for those of us who grew up with kind of this hard story, this muddy story, we can start to become really attracted to and almost addicted to self-help and self-improvement. And now we don't know how to stop. That happened when we were little. We don't know how to stop. He writes, growing up, I loved and still love to this day self-help books on personal development and growth. I love reading about how to dress, how to be, how to succeed. But unfortunately, that created in me this idea that I always needed to be different. And so I'm just wondering if your story had anything like that for you, the way that it did for Jason and I, or if that sort of informed your sort of lifelong, love with self-improvement.
I think it's I don't think so exactly. I think maybe from my perspective, I'm a Gen X, and I grew up with a baby boomer, hard-nosed mother, full of love, but not full of teddy bears, right?
Yeah.
So mine was basically bootstrap it and keep going versus reaching out for different, like even therapy when I grew up, that was not a thing. Or it wasn't a thing that you talked about anyway. And even in my coaching business, when I first started 25 years ago, in this, people would have me sign NDAs to say that I wasn't working with them, where that completely, because there was a stigma, right? A little stigma.
Right.
That has completely changed. But in now people brag about it. There's my coach, or here's my therapist.
Right.
But when I was coming up through that didn't exist. It was get up and go and deal with it. Whether that meant shove it in the closet or under the rug, who knows? I don't know. But it just meant kept going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you really specialize in that I know absolutely nothing about, we talked a tiny bit about it when we were together, but I would just love for you to spend some time breaking it down for us, is the DISC assessment. I know you're a huge fan.
I am.
Maybe compare and contrast it to the Enneagram. We talk a ton about the Enneagram on this show, but we have never had anybody come on and talk about DISC. So just anything you want to share, and then we'll kind of jump in from there.
Well, the DISC profile, similar to Enneagram, is a behavioral snapshot. You know, what makes you tick? How do you approach the world? How do you see things through your lens? And I got hot on the DISC in corporate America when I got out of college, and it was part of the fabric of the company that I was with. And then when I got lucky enough to go out on my own, in building my other companies, one of which we took public, we needed this mechanism to understand people fast, right? To shorten the curve. If you and I knew each other 20 years, we'd kind of get it, right? But how do we shorten that curve of what makes you tick, what makes me tick? And we tested several different personality profiles, and the DISC just kept coming back as the most useful for us. At the time, Enneagram wasn't the flavor of the day. It has been for the last few years. They all kind of come and go, but they're all wonderful, right? But they kind of come and go. But DISC has just kind of been my workhorse. And basically, it's just what I love about it. It is completely non-judgmental. It is not measuring intelligence. It is not measuring motivation. It's not measuring your circumstances of what you're going through today. It's just, here's how you see the world. No right, no wrong. It's about understanding yourself and then hopefully understanding the others around you. I think it's a little bit tighter than the Enneagram, and I like the Enneagram a lot and all of that stuff, and some others. But I keep coming back to this because, and I know I'm biased because I'm playing for the home team. I think it's the most. I think it's the most accurate of the ones out there, and it's not. There's no accidental woo-woo to it. There's none of that kind of stuff going on, and it's been a workhorse for us, particularly in business settings, but it's great for personal as well. So
yeah, and so DISC comes from, it's an acronym for the 4 different types. Is that right? What are those?
And those are, D is for dominance. So you know, the hard driving people that are just going to get there no matter what, whether they have any teammates left at the end of the day, they're going to get to the finish line either with people or without people.
Okay,
that's in a nutshell. So hard drivers, great at starting things. They're great in startup environments. I is influential, and those are the folks that are highly charismatic, never met a stranger. Think about folks with a high D, tell it. Folks with a high I, sell it, right? So they kind of use the persuaders to get their way. Love people, love big ideas, see things in abundance, all of that kind of stuff. Where Ds can sometimes see things in with a lot of doubt. They may lead with doubt versus that prove it to me mentality. The S, similar to I's, are attracted by people, but it's just more of a support system. Think about if you and I were at karaoke and you were the high I and I were the high S. The high I is going to be saying, give me that microphone. The high S is going to be saying, you sound great. So people oriented, but more of that great aunt you have in the family, you know, a nurse, people who just love and care and that kind of thing, but they don't need to be the star of the show.
And that's steadiness. That's S.
Steadiness, yeah.
Okay.
They're kind of like the glue. Like they're kind of like the person in the group that kind of fills in the blanks, right? They just take edges off. They are very accepting of others. They can put up with other people's junk really well. Put their needs behind others, sometimes to a fault. And then C, those folks are the ones who are highly analytical, highly logic-based thinkers, and detail-oriented. So think accountants, right? The jobs that have to be super precise. They tend to lead with a little bit of doubt too. So D's and C's are logic-based thinkers that lead with doubt. D's do it through a power switch, my way. C's do it through the playbook. What's the process and procedure? And then I and S are the people switches. I's are the highly charismatic, big personalities. S's are the more of the cheerleader or the support mechanism.
Interesting.
But still people oriented. And we all have all 4 of those to some degree. Okay. Most people dominate in one or maybe 2, but you have all 4 of those behaviors to some degree. When you take the DISC assessment, you get a personal profile, and it kind of helps inform who you are.
Got it. And C is conscientiousness.
Conscientious. Yep. Conscientiousness. And yeah, those are the folks that I need a lot of that around me. I have a very low C, so I don't want to do anything with
Mm,
detail work. I don't want to do any of that. So I'm very conscious to make sure my right hand executive assistant has a whole lot of that, and that my controller has a whole lot of
mm,
that to balance me out.
And so when you take the DISC assessment and you get your results, are you getting all four similar to the Myers-Briggs? Or are you getting two,
You're getting
like
all
with a
four.
wing?
Yeah. No, it's
Okay.
just all four. It'll come as a graph, right? It comes as a
Okay.
graph and then 60 pages to learn about yourself kind of
Okay.
deal, right? But I've been
Yeah.
doing it so long, all I need to see is your graph. If I have your graph, we can,
Mm,
and it's such a competitive advantage if you're able, whether it's DISC or any other profile assessment, if you're able at some point to get good enough to make reasonable assumptions about your DISC profile, and I can get on your level. DISC is all about how do I communicate, right? It's a communication tool. And if I can get on your level really quick, we have a better shot of succeeding together. Right. And that's the thing. I mean, and what I love most in my coaching business, I'm really driven by organizational behavior. So I love taking all the pieces of business, but really it's without the right human structure, you're going to slog. It's going to be a tough, doesn't mean you can't be successful if you don't get along, but it's a whole lot easier if you do.
yeah, right.
And so DISC is a weapon for that.
And do they interplay with one another? Like, if you are high in DNI, is
Yeah.
that a different personality type than high in D and C, for example?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the thing to where it's shortchanging to call folks, I'm a high D or I'm a high I. You're like, that's 5% of it, right? You have all four of these to some degree. For instance, I have a very high D and a very high I with a very low S and a very low C. So what you should see from me is a pretty aggressive behavior with a smile on my face until I don't get my way, right? And so you
Okay.
can toggle back and forth. And then a hot mess express on the organization train, because I have no,
Okay.
that low S basically just means you're open to lots of change. Change is not a dirty word. The higher the S and C, the more change resistant people are. Well, mine are on the
Mm,
bottom. So like I'm always up for what's next,
mm.
you know?
Yeah, love that. All right. So where's, like, the best place for people to take that? Is it just, like,
Yeah,
discassessment.com?
there's
Yeah.
there's several companies out there that do it, and it's easy to Google it. There are two or three companies that do it the best. Folks can certainly email me, and I'll give them a link or something like that to do. You can do a free assessment online, but those free assessments they kind of go about 25% of the way,
Mhm.
and the more robust assessments are going to cost anywhere from 70 to $130, depending on which one you're getting.
Okay.
It's a very easy Googleable thing to do, and if you get lost with that, they can certainly look at Well Coach Consulting, and we can help
Nice,
with that as
nice.
well.
And so you would say, like, for you, post taking the disc, in terms of things that you were immediately able to change the most, it was more about who you're surrounding yourself with,
Yeah,
having people that sort of fill in those gaps
yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
yeah. And that's if you become a student of the game of disc, it's going to take about a year to really master it. It'll take a
Mhm.
couple hours to get a good general info and kind of 101 and give you some tips and tricks. But the more you live with it and you can really understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, with disc, we spend a lot of time not on trying to fix people. We try to accentuate the strengths and then have folks come alongside of you that are just naturally better at some things, right? Like for spreadsheets, for instance. Doesn't mean I can't do a spreadsheet. I certainly can. It's the bane of my existence. So I bring along high C's that love doing spreadsheets. I'm being super elementary here, right? But
Yeah.
just natural skill sets. The disc is very good for just helping lining people up with their natural lanes.
Yeah, yeah. Love that. Well, speaking of people who would think spreadsheets are the bane of their existence, I was reading some things on your blog and you said entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes from a variety of backgrounds and influences. There is one class I find quite interesting, the creative class of entrepreneurs. And I have to tell you that the vast majority of people who listen to the show are going to be creative
Awesome.
entrepreneurs. Creative types rarely start a business in hopes of mastering spreadsheets and number crunching. In fact, making money is often at the bottom of the priority list. Interestingly, I find that freedom from a profit mindset often allows creative types to stay in their highest productivity zone of creating. And so just talk a little bit about, zones of productivity. Is that the same thing as a zone of genius? And just sort of this idea of things that we think are weaknesses can actually help us lock into some of our biggest strengths.
Yeah, that's a big question. Thank you. I don't think that. Zone of genius automatically equates to zone of productivity. They might, right? They might, and that's called super lucky or super blessed. And I'll give you an example of that. Like the buzz around the last few years has been about like chase your passion, do what you're passionate about. Well, what if I'm passionate about NBA basketball.
Okay.
I will never be an NBA basketball player. I'm
Come on now.
too short, and I'm not that good, right? But I may, it's particularly young in your life, right? You want to develop a skill set that you can just, because as you develop skill sets, you become more passionate in what you're good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. But this thing about creatives and why they fascinate me so much, and I'm lucky enough to work with lots of highly creative industries and people. And I grew up in a time where it was about make enough money to have a good life. And creatives often don't think that way, right? They're just thinking about the output of their creativity.
There
And
are,
so,
yeah.
but which is lovely until you're broke, right?
Right.
And a lot of that starving artist, right? The starving artist quote is a real thing. And so it's so interesting to me to try to work with folks and how do I keep them in this highly creative space, but also bring some financial discipline up beside it, which normally those two things with creatives are just, they don't fit very well. And I love that chess game. I love that puzzle of trying to bring some semblance of enough business structure to the creative process to flourish financially as well as creatively.
Right. And you call that, this came up in our episode a little bit, but I also saw it on the blog, this idea of corporate enough. What
Corporate
is
enough.
corporate enough?
Corporate enough. So typically entrepreneurs who get into their own business, they may have a heartburn about working in any big company, right? So that word corporate is it's turn off for them. At the same time, you got to have enough structure to grow and scale your business. So that's really where I try to ride up beside folks who are highly creative, highly entrepreneurial. The last thing they want to see is a 12-step program of a handbook, right? Or a whole lot of discipline in the business. So I try to bring up enough discipline in that business so that creative entrepreneur can stay creative and true to themselves of why they started the business, but at the same time, putting in enough building blocks to where it can scale. Whatever scale means different things for different people, right? But whatever that means, you got to have some kind of brick and mortar behind the big idea at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
At
What
some
would
point.
what would you say is the like first trellis you usually put into place in a creative entrepreneur's business? Like what is usually the biggest thing that's lacking?
Financial discipline, and discipline may be the wrong word, financial awareness,
Mm,
right? Because you think about we'll just use very elementary stuff. Let's say an artist, a songwriter or something like
mm.
that, right? All of a sudden, the songwriter has this
The
passion
very
and
Nashville example.
yeah, national examples. So she's writing these songs and doing great and having a great time and broke because she's young and hadn't had a hit yet or whatever. All of a sudden starts getting some traction. Well, now money starts coming. And now here
Mm.
comes teams because as soon as you get successful, lots of people want to be around you, right?
Yeah, right.
So they may not even understand the word profit and loss statement, right? Even just very basic things where they're brilliant in their zone. I can't write a song, right? They're brilliant in what they're doing, but this whole other side of maintaining a business and making sure you've got money in the checking account, foreign language. That would be the first. The second is how to surround yourself with the right people. That's where entrepreneurs get stuck really fast because they're used to doing everything themselves, right?
Right.
Just used to do. They have to, right? They're full of grit, full of go get them. But that only can get you so far because you only got so many hours in the day. And so then when folks start hiring, which is incredibly difficult to do, it's incredibly difficult to hire the right way. It's completely natural for the entrepreneur to hire in likeness of herself because that's natural, right?
Okay.
Well, guess what? We want the family tree to fork. We don't want a group that's just a spoon, right? We
Right.
want the fork. That's where things like DISC come in, or a good advisor helping you bring someone alongside of you that personality wise, you may not click immediately because you're so different. That becomes the strength if you can recognize it.
Wow, that's good. We're gonna come back to that actually. I have that in this idea of like I'll do it myself. We're gonna come back to that. Um, before that though, one of the premises, in underestimated is this idea of fear's a really boring liar. And it tries to convince us things like, someday would be better than today, that there is this elusive someday when we'll have more time, more money, more focus, more energy. And today is not that day. And it sort of convinces us that if we try now, we'll fail. And that it operates in what I call bandwidth shifts, which
Okay.
says that if any one of our resources at all is crunched, then we shouldn't begin. If we don't have a completely empty calendar, if we don't have a 6 month, chunk of money just to play with, let alone an emergency fund, whatever it is. And in one of your blog posts, you talked about this idea of test fast, fail fast, adjust fast, which is kind of the opposite of that fear energy, which just says wait and
Yeah.
wait and wait and wait until everything's perfect. So just talk a little bit about that model: test fast, fail fast, adjust fast.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for reading the blogs.
Yeah.
uh, as an entrepreneur coach, really, I am always going to push people off the ledge if they've got 1 foot off of it. If they've got 2 feet firmly planted, I'm not going to overly push. But that fear of failure thing, and I may shortchange this a little bit, but remember, I grew up with a mother that had zero fear. And
Yeah.
you know what she taught me one time? Her dad came right off the boat from Cyprus when he was 17 years old by himself.
Wow.
Parents put him on a boat and said, "Go to America, find a better life." And you can see him up on Ellis Island and this.
Wow.
And she told me once, she said, the fact that my dad at 17 years old came to a country by himself, not speaking the language, and came to Ellis Island has always fueled me to not be afraid to try things.
Yeah.
And man, that really stuck with me, right?
Hmm.
And so that really informs me, but also this fear factor. Everybody has fear at some point, but I try to frame it to, well, what's the fear? Shouldn't you be afraid of what might not happen because you didn't try?
That's right.
Right?
That's
And
right.
that test fast, fail fast, adjust fast, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. Entrepreneurs fail their way up, right? I got countless failures, right? But the thing is, you get back up and you keep going. You get back up, and there is no perfect time. And then the last thing I'll say about that to your question was, I had this. I wish this were my quote, but I'm a huge Kenny Rogers fan.
Okay.
I hate that he's dead. I love him. I love him. I love Kenny Rogers. But I was
Hmm.
watching an interview with him once, and he had success very early in life, and he was talking to his mother
Hmm.
and about that success and how to deal with it. And she told him, I love this quote: "Be happy where you are, but not satisfied to stay there." Right? Like,
Wow.
enjoy
Yeah.
what you're doing. Enjoy what you're doing right now today,
Yeah.
but don't get stuck. Right? Keep
Mm.
moving. Keep look, because he had success very early as a performer and singer songwriter, and didn't get stuck. Right? He just kept pushing, kept pushing. So I think what it would inform me in Gen X again, right? Grow up with baby boomer tough mom. All I know is get up and go.
Right. Yeah, I'm what's called an exennial, so I'm like technically the last year of Gen X, but we're like right on the cusp.
Yeah.
But we kind of we like to think the best of both millennials and Gen
Yeah,
X.
for
So
sure.
I resonate with a lot of that, and also just growing up the way that I did, I got a lot more of that sort of mentality, the grit and the get punched in the teeth and jump back up, than the other. I was not. There were no participation trophies in my childhood.
Exactly. Right. I mean, yeah. And who knows which way's right or wrong? Who knows? Right. We all got to find our own journey through all that. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I didn't know that. I didn't know participation trophies either.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, next I want to talk about what you call the four silos of success: people, sales, profit, and self. And
Yeah.
so this becomes a big part of the structure and and again, the sort of trellis of what you walk people through. So what do we all know those words, but I don't know if we know how you're using them.
Okay.
People, sales, profit, self. How do you
Yeah.
think about this?
Yeah. And you'll see, with spending time together, I try to take things to the simplest common denominator as possible because I ain't that bright. And so in my mind, corporate enough, the silos of that are trying to keep people, sales, profit, and self in as close to harmony as possible. I don't like to use the word balance. I don't think there is great balance for entrepreneurs. But if you're focusing on those four silos intently, you got a pretty good shot of being well-rounded and going forward. And we could talk about this all day, but just very simply, the people part, that is, how am I interacting with team members around me? How am I finding the right folks? Am I being clear in the mission? Am I giving them the tools to succeed? Whether that's an employee, whether that's a friendship group, whether that's a spouse, whether that's my kids, whether that's a vendor, am I pouring into understanding that people around me are the most dynamic resource I will ever have? right? There are plenty of people who make widgets, but how I communicate, people like to do business with people they enjoy being around, right? So how do I interact with others? That's the people side in a nutshell. The sales part, of course, many people are good at something, but they don't know how to tell people about it, right? So if you're really good at something and you can't advertise it or talk about it the right way, you still got it. Nobody's going to know. Just so all the stuff in that, right? What are the ways that we're promoting either our product or ourselves or whatever goods we're trying to put out into the world? How are we doing that in a methodical way? The profit part is just that. Are we making money doing what we're trying to do? Is this a business or is this a hobby? Right? Or is it philanthropy or something? But be able to call it what it is, and then drive toward those results. So as we're getting launched with great people relationships and we've got a great product or a great service, we have to be able to monetize that in a way that sustains our livelihood if it's a business, right? If it's a business. And so all of that financial discipline, and quite frankly, the profit part of those four is the easiest thing to master. However, it's the last thing anyone ever masters.
Okay.
So you think about if you take this traditional route and you come out of school and you go get a job somewhere, and let's say you get lucky and you go get a good job and they're training you and they're teaching you what to do. Usually the last thing they're teaching you about is the profitability of the business. Now, quite frankly, it should be the first thing they teach you because most team members, employees want to help that business grow if they know what that means.
Right.
Where entrepreneurs tend to be very guarded on the front side. I don't want anybody to know what I'm making. Well, they're guessing anyway, right? They're guessing. So you should be open and honest so they can help you get to where you want to go. The other beautiful thing about learning the profit side of the business is the numbers don't talk back. They're just numbers.
Right.
It's just a report card. It's just informing you this is working, this is not.
Yeah. I want to pause right there for a second because in Underestimated, I talk in the imposter syndrome chapter, actually, I talk about a bunch of different ways that people can start to feel like this is all going to be a waste of time. And one of them is that the data starts to tell them that they're failing. The likes aren't moving the way that they want, the downloads aren't where they want them to be, the profits not where they want them to be. And so a lot of people, entrepreneurs in particular, sort of take the ostrich in the sand, if I don't look, then it doesn't exist, or the data is my enemy kind of approach. So like, what do you say to people on like, here's how you actually start to fall in love with what those numbers, that they don't lie and that they, don't have an opinion. They're just numbers. How do you fall in love with that data when it feels kind of cold?
Yeah, you speed up the repetition of it, right? I kind of call it run toward the conflict. And so something that's scary, such as, we'll just stick with the numbers. So many entrepreneurs don't have any kind of financial discipline. So it's just receipts. And if I've got money in the checking account, then I'm good, right? So then if we can move them to an accounting or a bookkeeper, right? Now that starts helping. And then repetition, either having a coach or someone beside you who can go, hey man, these numbers are just telling us what we're doing. It's either telling us we're on the right track or we need to make some adjustments, and speeding that up. So if folks can look at numbers even more often, they become far less scary as a data point. That's it. That's really it. Repetition of looking at it over and over and over and over again.
Love it. Okay. And then that fourth pillar, that fourth silo is going to be self. And you say, CEOs want to focus on their business, but there are 4 silos to success: people, sales, profit, and self. This is the full picture of a healthy business. A healthy business begins with a healthy person. If I hear from a leader that they quote, don't have time to work out or take care of themselves, then I call BS immediately. When I hear I'm exhausted, it's a huge red flag. Talk about that red flag. What is that usually symbolizing throughout the business?
Yeah, if folks aren't taking, and way back in the day when I first started my business, it was just called people, sales, profit, right? I didn't have that fourth thing, but I started seeing the trend. I started seeing this trend where the business owner or the CEO would fall in love so much with the business that maybe everything else got left behind, whether that was health, whether that was family, whether that was relationships. And you can operate like that for a long time, but you're not going to maximize your full potential doing that. Human connection is so important. And oftentimes I'll see entrepreneurs that they may have a spouse and they're young, they get married young and they start doing their thing and they're beside each other. But now this entrepreneur, the business starts taking off. So it's very easy to leave this person behind because you're just as in love with the business as you are with this person accidentally, right? or the health thing. If you're not healthy, everybody knows this. If you don't have your health, you got nothing. It does not matter how much money you're making. None of that matters. None of that matters. So when I hear folks say I'm just too exhausted or too tired, I do call the BS on that, because quite frankly, the self part is what you should schedule first. Even with folks I work with, we make sure that spouse dates are on the calendar, right? Health is on whatever health means. That might mean a walk for you. It might mean, I don't know, it might mean going to F45 5 times a week is for you. Whatever it is for you, something that is clearing your mind, clearing your stress. Because in my mind, exercise is just as important for here as it is for your waistline, right? And so getting those 4 things in harmony. And you know what? People are generally good naturally at 1 or 2 of them, never at 4. So it's a skill build. It's just a skill build.
Right. Yeah, talking about clearing your mind, you say, I insist my clients have days off for a retreat or vacation at least every 3 months. And even then, I'd like to see more time off. It's key to recharge your mind and give you things to look forward to. It's easy to think activity equals productivity, but as time goes by and you shift to strategically grow the business, that's when your brain starts really working. Your brain needs healthy space, which means staring at the ocean is sometimes the most productive thing you can do for yourself and your business. And you go on to say, being on a hamster wheel all the time is dangerous. Strip stuff out of your schedule so you have time to do nothing. If that's a walk or a bigger vacation, it might free up your brain to think of the next huge business idea. Keep the calendar low sometimes. Productive energy will start filling that space that was used for tactical survival. And one of the things that I talk about and underestimated is, when we're trying to think our way through a thinking problem, we get kind of stuck in that prefrontal cortex and we're kind of overusing that feels like you could sneeze through your forehead sort of energy. And that actually what science tells us is that if we want to innovate solutions, new ways of thinking to solve new problems, that happens in our limbic brain, where we do conceptual blending and novelty seeking. We're connecting dots in ways we've never quite seen connected before, whereas the prefrontal cortex wants to, sort of solve new things that are happening with old rules.
Mm-hmm.
This has always worked before, so it should keep working. And one of the things that the science talks about is that mind wandering and rest, the ability to even allow yourself to get bored is actually some of the most important work we'll do to innovate those solutions. And my friend Allie Fallon in The Power of Writing It Down says, when you think limbic, think limbs. So stretching, going on a walk, dancing in the living room. And so what are you doing? What works for you best to actually make sure you're not just constantly up here in your head? I think about that rule of like, if you work with your mind, Sabbath with your hands,
Yeah.
that kind of idea.
Yeah. For me, it's travel. I love to be on
Yeah.
an airplane and
Okay.
staring at different countries and things like that. And I have a spouse that drives that agenda for us and got me into that habit, and I love it. But so many entrepreneurs, to what we're talking about in your point, they feel guilty if they're not busy, right? Because they got their first level of success. They got liftoff by the grind, and that's needed. You got to grind. I mean, this isn't about don't work hard, right? But as you grow as a business owner or CEO, the nirvana eventually is accountable for everything, but responsible for very little. And in the beginning, you're responsible and accountable. You have to be. You don't have resource. You have to be. But if you're going to get true lift, you've got to be able to push. You got to have people around you to push things down the org chart, whether that's team employees or vendors or whatever that might be. And so then that starts creating space. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs will all of a sudden start feeling guilty. All right. Where I'm like, no way, man. You go on that walk, dude, because that's where your best stuff's going to come. Whether it's today or whether it's a month, whatever, you need that space to do nothing. I still battle that, right? Because I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up. So
Yeah.
when I don't have things on my schedule every once in a while, I still have to go, this is brilliant. Isn't this great? Isn't this great that
Yeah.
I just get to go walk the dog for the next hour?
Right. Yeah. Talking about not being the one who's doing it, accountable but not responsible. Talk to us a little bit about the difference between the sphere of concern and the circle of influence. And I was thinking, as you sort of like dive into that, how that can show up at work or it can show up in the home. That whole idea of like the mental load, and women in particular tend to carry a lot of that. So
Yes.
talk about the difference between those two.
Well, at home, at home, it means I know when to just say yes, you're right, and shut my mouth. No, here's the sphere of concern. Think about it. We'll do it from a work standpoint first. The sphere of concern is, let's say, in the company, Acme company, and let's say we make, I don't know, whatever we do. So we got this sphere of concern, and it's everything that goes on in the company. Inside of that sphere of concern is your circle of influence. Like, what is your domain expertise? Where does your opinion have the most weight? Where do you provide the most value? It doesn't mean that you're not concerned with everything that's going on in the company, but you were probably hired for some specific skill set or some zone of genius that you've got. That's your circle of influence, right? That's where I know I can make direct impact with you all the time, right? Let's say you and I were working together and you're in Mary Marantz's company, right? I know that your circle, you are the writer, you've got the big ideas, that's your zone of genius. So if I'm in that sphere with you, I know my circle of influence. There's not a lot I can do to help you there. You got it. But now let's start saying that, Chris, I want to start a clothing line. Chris, I want to get better at accounting or whatever. That's your sphere. You're concerned about all of it, but you've got this circle of influence where you're a zone of genius. You go find people around that to help you with the others.
Yeah, love that. Well, that kind of leads us right into, and I said we were coming back here, this whole I'll do it myself syndrome.
Yeah.
My grandma Goldie, and I talk about this in my first book, Dirt, was notorious for saying, I'll do it myself.
Yep.
Like very, gosh, would she be boomer or would she almost be, what is that, the silent generation?
Yeah.
She was born in 33.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, not millennial. We'll say that. And I think that's like I see that in myself as an entrepreneur. I see that in the entrepreneurs I coach. I see that in the people who want to write books that I coach. It's this idea, it's this like, no one will do it the way that I will. No one will do it to the, A plus level that I will. And you say untrained leaders are likely to be very comfortable in one style of communication. This is true of everyone in general. You may micromanage, undermanage, or you may be autocratic. You default to one style, and that works for a while, in particular in small companies and during the launch of a new company. But as time goes by, leaders wonder why people leave or don't do what they ask them to. Essentially, why aren't people like me, like you were talking about earlier? This is when the self-fulfilling prophecies happen. An entrepreneur starts thinking, I'm the only one who can do everything around here, and I might as well do it myself. The reason this type of thinking begins comes down to bad communication style. You go on to say, we think this person sucks, but what we're really doing is disguising winners as losers, as Ken Blanchard would say. So talk about winners as losers
Yeah.
and why this is a communication issue,
Well,
not a control issue. Or
yeah.
maybe that
Well,
too.
maybe both, right?
Yeah.
In this, I bet your grandma was high D on this profile because
Okay.
typically that kind of language is going to come from I'll just do it myself, right? Because
Yeah.
they go fast and they can fix things. How well they can fix things, who knows? But as you grow, you've got to be able to start getting results through other people, right? Even if those other people are doing it at 80% level that you could, right? And so what we try to teach is, hey, if you've got a team member whose competence level is high enough to do something at the 70 to 80% level that you could do it, that's the time to get it off your plate. Because at that point, you become a coach. You're coaching up the last 70 to 100, right? You're coaching instead of starting and grinding all the way from. So you're teaching skill sets, you're judging other people's competence, you're able to coach them to a better result versus doing all the work. If you're doing all the work yourself, you're coaching nobody. You don't have time to coach anybody. So that self-fulfilling prophecy comes around. And the leader does set the pace for the pack. I would never expect my team members to outrun me. I wouldn't expect that. And so many owners get caught up in that. Like, they don't do it as fast. Well, it's not their business, right? And they're learning and they haven't been putting in the reps the way you have, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but the thing around it is delegate at 70 to 80% of competence level. You don't want to over delegate, right? If someone doesn't, if you told me today, Chris, come write a book, you're on my new book writing team, write the next book. I don't know how to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I would fail, right?
Mm.
But if you said, Chris, I've read that you've got 2 crappy books out there. Go ahead and start drafting this one, but I'm going to coach you on how to do it a little bit better. That's a whole different conversation, whole different conversation. So it's about measuring folks' competence level and commitment level on any particular project and then deciding what is appropriate for me to start pushing down the org chart.
Yeah. You know what I love about that answer is that it didn't just leave it. A lot of times you'll hear somebody say that like, oh, if they can do it at 70% or 80% or what have you. And what somebody like me, who is a perfectionist, entrepreneur, you know, A++
Yeah.
overachiever, let's go, hears is, "Oh, you have to be okay accepting a
Nope.
B minus
Nope.
in that area." But I love that element of now you become the
That's right.
coach.
That's
That's
right.
good.
Yeah,
That's really
you
good.
become you want to be as the CEO or owner. In the beginning, you are the player, right? And then you may be the player coach, but eventually you want to be the coach. That's how you get results through other people when the coach is teaching. So you're not accepting poor standards, but you're allowing enough rope to judge the person's competence and commitment level on the specific goal or task. Much different. It's much different than you head down doing all the work. You can't coach anybody like that.
Right, right. Well, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, deals a lot with us becoming very self-aware, understanding our strengths, understanding our weaknesses, understanding the gaps, bringing people in to fill those gaps instead of trying to do it all ourselves. And one of the other areas that you teach in is this idea of EQ,
Yes.
versus IQ. And you say there are three elements of EQ: self-awareness, self-regulation, and social awareness. So what are each of those and how do they play a part?
Yeah, well, the self awareness is and DISC is great for that, right? DISC is going to light you up if you pay any attention. So is Enneagram, right? You're going to understand who you are. So understanding really who you are is foundational to any good relationship because you're not. It will help you not blame other people for things. It'll help you understand what you're bringing to the party. So that self awareness is big, and then that self regulation is what do I do with that? Right? I have a disc profile that could lean into being a hothead, right? If I don't an emotional outburst, let's say it that way, right? I have a wife who is steady Eddie, so when
Yeah.
we're in conflict, I'm the one going, "Let's do it," right? Where she's going, "Take a beat," right? So I
Yep.
had to learn that about myself really well. That hey, I've got this pendulum swing sitting in my natural behavior. How can I regulate that? How can I not be overly emotional if negative things come at me fast or things like that? Okay. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's it in general. And then that social awareness part is reading the room, right? Do I have an ability to read the room? And some folks have that naturally. The beautiful thing about EQ, unlike DISC, is EQ you can go work on. You can work on it, right? DISC is you are who you are and who you are is fine. We're not going to try to ever change you. EQ is slightly more judgmental, right? Because you either got it in these areas or you don't. But the beauty of it is, if you can embrace it, you can go to work on those things. Social regulation being a huge one, and social regulation after social awareness is: can I inspire or move a room? Can I move my group as a leader? Can I paint a vision and show the team how we're going to get there? Can I move this group of people toward our agenda? And those are the components. And then the fifth component, and there's just motivation. What's your intrinsic motivation toward life, right? So what do you? How do you approach things? Or you get up and go no matter what the assignment is, even if you like it or you don't.
Well, talking about that idea of, the self-awareness component, that first component being kind of key to actually doing the work of showing up, and not always flinching at the ledge, like we talked about earlier, of even believing that the world needs more of you. When I was on your show, I think we talked about this a little bit. I talk about this in the book. This concept of positioning
Mm-hmm.
is one of the exercises I walk people through a marketing course that I have. And the positioning statement is, I am blank because I am not blank, where the tricky part is both blanks have to be arguably good things. Like people have to be able to agree to disagree, as opposed to I'm good because I'm not bad or I'm talented because I'm not a hack. And so this is kind of what it does is it creates sort of like the Coke versus Pepsi, the Apple versus Android, where you start to kind of divide your people into tribes and now they're actually like taking a stand for something because you've taken a stand for something. And unsurprisingly, it is one of the hardest exercises for
I
people
bet.
because it's hard enough to know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
let alone to own who you are, let alone to believe the world actually needs who you are and needs more of it. And so maybe just for fun, just for, to play around, do you have your answers? I am blank because I am not blank.
I don't know that I have my answers.
It's
I
tough.
think I would have to
It's
think through that a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'll let you off the hook then with this question, which is when you find one of your coaching clients really stuck at that place of not believing that the
Mhm.
world needs more of who they are in
Mhm.
particular. They say things like, it's all been done, it's all been done better, it's been done by somebody else the world actually wants to listen to. What do you do to kind of walk them through understanding that the strengths they have are on
Yeah, well,
purpose?
thank you for the grace of the reframe of the question.
You're
That's
very welcome.
also part of the Gen X thing. We don't want to talk about ourselves, right? We want to talk about other people. This is a biggie. I have a client going through it right now. All right. Okay. She's super successful. Started her business 10 years ago, got great launch. And now all of a sudden, I do think that there's a thing where some people are afraid to be super successful, right? And they will self-sabotage their way right out of it. If not, somebody's just not in their ear, just push it. Even eagles need a push, right? Eagles need to be pushed sometime. And so what I'll see is someone will get lift. They're like, oh my God, somebody's buying what I'm selling. Like even that's that thrill of that first victory. But
Right.
as that becomes bigger and bigger, all of a sudden, here come competitors. Right. That's the thief of joy that I see a lot. When entrepreneurs have their idea and they get some kind of lift going, and then all of a sudden they start looking around going, uh-oh, that one's better than me. That one's better than me. Why would anybody buy from me? We're going to fail. And nothing on the P&L says failure. Nothing about the business says failure. But this toggle back is real about not being able to be successful. And you know where I see it a lot? When we really start getting down into how they were brought up, right? How they were brought up. And it will oftentimes, and through no fault of the parents, right? But you think about at a certain age, most people aren't entrepreneurs, right? Most people have a 9 to 5, and that's fine. That's totally okay. But for an entrepreneur to have a real conversation with someone who's not an entrepreneur, and if it's inside the family, whew, that can create tons of junk, because that parent who's working the 9 to 5, they may have been too scared to go out on their own at some point, right? Or all they see is the news where the business fails here, or business fails there. So it starts bringing that kid's mindset back to childhood, right? I'm not good
Yes.
enough. I'm not.
Right.
While their P&L and their business may be booming, they're still thinking this is going to fail.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that fear of success is 100% true. That so, each chapter of the book of my book, Underestimated, is a different face of fear, and I save the best for last, which is that fear of success. Success is a slippery slope, and a couple of different things that I write in there. One is that we know that leaders wear a target on their back because they're out front. It's far easier to stay stuck repeating the loop of flinching at the last minute, and the boulder rolls down the mountain, and then we push it all the way back up because we get to stay the underdog, which is who people root for. And, a lot of people are afraid that if they ever were to get to that place of the top of the mountain or that place of significance, they wouldn't know how to handle it well. I had a coaching client, Liz, who I quote in the book, say, it honestly scares me to see myself as a winner, someone who is successful like that. I would like to think I would know what to do with it. But if that kind of success ever were to happen, I think I would freeze. It all feels so foreign. And you talk about this in one of the blog posts, this idea that this myth that you want to debunk. You say, we have talked about the idea that a person is a natural born leader. You hear the phrase all the time on TV, in movies, and in books, but in my opinion, it is easily debunked. I don't think there are natural born leaders. There are big charismatic personalities who can wax poetic and convince people they are born leaders. But leadership is a skill set that is learned. You don't have to be born with it to be it. It is my firm belief that it is a learned skill set. Anyone with can be a great leader if they put their mind to it. So I guess just speak to that person who's afraid that they can't
Yeah.
be trusted
And how
with
freeing
what
is that?
leadership.
How freeing is that?
Yeah.
That, it's this whole natural born leader thing. It's hogwash. It's a hogwash.
Yeah.
Leadership is a skill set. And there are all kind of programs out there I rely on Ken Blanchard. That's my go-to. And so I'm a big believer in situational leadership, which is a very easy model to latch onto and start learning. And folks
What
have
is situational leadership? I'm not
situational
familiar.
leadership, basically in a nutshell, just means meeting people where they are and applying a leadership to the specific person's competence and commitment on a specific goal or task. For instance, just very briefly, let's say that you were running a spaceship company, right? And that you were the founder of the spaceship company. And you
Okay.
said, Chris, we're going to hire you and we want you to fly the spaceship to the moon. Okay. I've never flown a spaceship. So your leadership style with me on the front side would need to be very micromanaged. I say you do, no questions asked. Here's the manual. Here's the test. There's the button. Here's the seatbelt. Here's how you get in, right? However, if you said, Chris, now we're going to hire you to be our organizational behavior coach. Hopefully I would be able to demonstrate transferable skill set to you very quickly to where you would not need to micromanage me. You would just need to support me. Chris, what do you need from me today? Chris, what are you thinking about for the next quarter? Right? We become conversational. You become supportive. The higher my competence and commitment as the leader, now you support me versus direct me. When you can identify that I'm new at the task or haven't demonstrated transferable skill set, you're much more directive. And when you don't do that, that's where that winner disguised as a loser comes in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. Do you get into like fixed mindset, growth mindset to show people that these leadership skills can be learned,
Oh yeah.
that they can become the person who can stand at the top of the mountain?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just spend the bulk of my time there. I mean, it's, and that's back to that thing where people have a natural style. Most in situational leadership, there are only 4 styles. That's also the beauty of it. You only got 4 things to learn. Most people are naturally very good at one. That might be the micromanagement, right? That might be delegate way too fast. My natural style would be delegate way too fast. Woo, thank God you're on the team. Go get them, Tiger. Right?
Yeah.
So now I've got that winner disguised as a loser who doesn't know where the water fountain is. And I said, go get us water. Right? My fault. I haven't shown what good performance looks like. But those 4 can be learned. So now I know, I've trained myself, anytime someone's new on the task or the job, I am going to assume that I need to overdo it until they show me they got it. Then I'll start backing off.
Last big area of a question I have for you, still talking about success as a slippery slope. I want to read this part from that chapter. The truth is, we're afraid to let go of playing the underdog. We're addicted to it, really. Everyone roots for the underdog. The unlikely hero is the unmitigated darling of all the chanting masses. They love you so long as you struggle for it every single solitary step of the way. The truth is, we're afraid to let go of playing the underdog. Do you want to know who doesn't have that kind of universal support? People who have already reached some level of success and kept it. Oh, how quickly the crowds can turn on you then. You had your moment, now let someone else have a chance. We're already on to the next unlikely story. It is one thing to be the scrappy underdog forever sliding back down this mountain. It is quite another to have arrived and find out just how lonely it can be at the top. Most people won't start watching until hour 9,999. They'll tell everyone how they know you at hour 10,000, but the clock has already started ticking on who will turn on you by hour 10,001. They say that leaders wear a bullseye on their back because they are always out in front, so that this final approach to the finish line makes us a moving target. We know this. We know it, and it terrifies us. And you, in a blog post, agree with this. You say, time and again, I've seen good friends become detractors. As a person within their group becomes successful, as your business grows, you will start to understand who your real friends are versus acquaintances who were comfortable with you as long as you were on their level or below. And you say the difference is easy to spot. What do you pay attention to understand who's really for you and who's a detractor?
Anytime that something good happens for you, your true friends will be the first to call you and celebrate it with you.
Yeah.
I mean, people serve seasons in your life, right? Some folks are there for long seasons, some are short seasons, that kind of thing. But
yeah,
and so all that's, I love all that stuff you just read from your book too. I mean, leaders, we also have to teach. It does start getting lonely at the top, and so we also teach. You got to pat yourself on the back.
That's right.
Right? You got to learn how to pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Now, that's the nice way. If I were being Gen X, what I would say is lions are not concerned with the opinions of sheep.
Right.
It's probably going to get me in trouble. But you got to have some of that grit too, right? Like people don't fall on top of mountains. If you get to the top of the mountains, it's because that boulder has rolled back down and you pushed it back up again and again and again and again. And so many folks, I think, subconsciously can't be happy for others because it's their own junk.
Yeah. Final words of advice for the person who, feels like they know they're being called up to something, but it's actually the fear of success that's keeping them stuck, the fear of being seen.
Yeah. Go for it. I mean, like, just go, right? It's so much easier to go for things now than when I was on the front, when I was younger, or our parents, where folks would stay in a job and stay at the company for 50 years.
Right.
I think it's so much less risky now to be an entrepreneur than it is just to sit in a company who's going to go through layoffs, who's going to go through ebbs and flows. You're going to go through ebbs and flows and tough times no matter where you are anymore, right? And last night I was watching a documentary on the Heinz Corporation, and they talked about what a wonderful company. Even during the Great Depression, they didn't lay off one person, right? It was the CEO's calling to get through. You wouldn't see that stuff today. You wouldn't see that stuff today. So taking the leap for yourself, the risk level is not anywhere near what it used to be. If you've got a good idea, it means it's a worthy idea. Go do it. Go do it.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, Chris, this was incredible. I could talk to you for hours and hours more, but I know you are a busy person with a lot more to do today. And so let us know where we can find you, where we can get, go deeper with you to talk
Awesome.
about the coaching, the DISC assessments, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's been awesome seeing. I'm really, really enjoying getting to know you too. You are a bright light, and I'm glad that
Thank you.
I'm glad that we're in the same circle.
Same.
Well Coach Consulting is the name of the company. The website's there. We also have our own podcast, and you can find it everywhere. You can find yours, I'm sure. So the Well Coach podcast with Chris Weinberg, season 4 starts next week.
Nice.
And so we'll be off and running there. But yeah, we're pretty easy to find, and love to chat with anybody who may benefit from that.
Love it. All right, friends, make sure you go follow Chris. Chris on Instagram. Is it at Well Coached?
At Well Coached.
At Well Coached.
Yep.
Look into taking that DISC assessment. Use that self-awareness we've been talking about all this episode to step into the leader you are being called to be. And until next time, friends, this is the Mary Marantz Show, and welcome to your underestimated season.